The sun was just beginning to peek over the jagged peaks of the Apusini Mountains when I first arrived in Rimti, a small village tucked away in the heart of Transylvania. I had heard whispers of this place, a hidden gem where time seemed to have paused, leaving behind a world that modernity had scarcely touched. But nothing could have prepared me for the first morning I spent there, watching the sunlight spill over the mountains, only to disappear and rise again. They call it the double sunrise. For a moment, it felt like the world had granted me an extra breath, a chance to savor something I had almost missed. The journey to Rimti. The road to Rimti winds through rolling hills and dense forests, with occasional glimpses of craggy cliffs that promise adventure. It's the kind of journey that forces you to slow down, the kind where the destination, no matter how enticing, shares equal importance with the path you take to get there. By the time I reached the village, it was as though I had crossed some invisible boundary between the modern world and an older, simpler way of life. I stepped out of the car and into a place that felt like a dream. The air was crisp, carrying the faint aroma of wood smoke and freshly baked bread. Rimiti's streets are lined with traditional whitewashed houses, their green shutters standing in stark contrast against the bright walls. Many of these homes have stood for centuries, bearing silent witness to the ebb and flow of time. A glimpse into Rimiti's past. To truly understand Rimti, you need to dive into its history. This village, now so peaceful, was once a bustling hub for mining. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the area's rich deposits of gold and silver attracted workers and traders from far and wide. But as the mines began to close, so too did the village's chapter as a mining center. What remained, however, was a community determined to preserve its heritage. As I wandered through the village, I met an elderly woman named Ilona, who shared stories passed down through generations. She spoke of her ancestors who worked in the mines, and of the communal spirit that kept Rimti alive even after the industry faded. "This village is our heart," she said, her voice filled with quiet pride, "and we keep it beating by remembering." The architecture, a step back in time. Ilona's words echoed in my mind as I explored Rimiti's stunning architecture. The house The most remarkable thing, these homes are not frozen in time. They are living, breathing spaces, meticulously preserved by the villagers. In the 1990s, an extensive restoration project ensured that Rimiti's the double sunrise. Of course, no visit to Rimti would be complete without experiencing its most famous phenomenon, the double sunrise. Piatra Secuului, or Seckler's Rock, looms large over the village. At dawn, the sun rises behind the mountain, casting golden light across Rimti before briefly disappearing. Moments later, it rises again, creating the illusion of a second sunrise. The surrounding landscape is a paradise for hikers, climbers, and paragliders. I decided to tackle a trail leading up to Seckler's Rock. The climb was challenging but rewarding. Each step brought me closer to breathtaking views of the village below, nestled like a pearl in the valley. Locals often say that the mountains here have a soul. As I sat on the summit, watching the clouds drift lazily overhead, I began to understand what they meant. There's a stillness here, a kind of peace that's becoming increasingly rare in our fast-paced world. The heart of the village, its people. What makes Rimti truly special, though, is its people. There's a warmth and hospitality here that feels genuine. During my stay, I was invited into a local home for a meal. The table was laden with dishes that showcased the best of Hungarian and Romanian cuisine, goulash, homemade bread, and an array of pickled vegetables. My host, Isfan, shared stories of village life as we ate. He spoke of the seasonal rhythms that define Rhyme from planting in the spring to harvesting in the fall. We live close to the land, he said, and it teaches us patience. Cultural touchstones. Rimiti's culture is as rich as its landscape. The village is home to two beautiful churches, an Orthodox church and a Unitarian church, that serve as spiritual and communal hubs. Each Sunday, the bells ring out, calling the faithful to worship. There's also a strong tradition of craftsmanship in Rhyme. I visited a workshop where a man named Laszlo was making wooden tools and decorative items. His hands moved with practiced ease, shaping the wood into objects both functional and beautiful. This craft connects me to my ancestors, he said. It's a way of keeping their memory alive. Rhyme faced the threat of modernization, but instead of succumbing to it, the villagers came together to preserve their heritage. Restoration projects were undertaken, and today, Rhyme is a shining example of how a community can honor its past while embracing the future. Guest houses in the village offer cozy accommodations that blend modern comforts with traditional charm. Many of these are run by local families who take pride in sharing their culture with visitors. Staying in one of these homes, I felt less like a tourist and more like a welcomed guest. A farewell to Rhyme. As my time in Rhyme came to an end, I found myself reluctant to leave. This village had offered me more than just beautiful scenery and fascinating history. It had given me a glimpse into a way of life that values connection to the land, to tradition, and to one another. Driving away, I glanced back at Seckler's Rock one last time. The sun was high in the sky now, its light casting long shadows over the village. Rhyme felt timeless, like a place that would always be waiting for those who sought it out. With that said, thanks, and until the next time.